Welcome to Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the Long Beach area. Today we are joined by Senator-elect Steve Bradford. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, my friend.
A tremendous victory and a real victory. You went into a general election against Warren Furutani, a well-respected former assemblyman like yourself, and you pulled it out quite nicely, about 55% of the vote. What went right?
We worked hard. We outworked our opponent. We did all the right things. We touched voters, and we never stopped from March all the way through November 8th.
But when you were touching voters, what were they saying to you and your team? What was the mood in your district in the heart of Los Angeles County?
I mean, it was a lot of despondency about the overall climate of the election. People were not as excited as I've heard them before, especially in a presidential election. But at the end of the day, they still wanted quality education. They wanted, improved economy. They wanted to deal with this homeless issue that's real in California.
So let's talk about that despondency, because in other parts of the country that had been quite blue in the past, that despondency translated into Democrats that had been Obama supporters apparently voting for President-elect Trump. Why didn't we see that here in California, in the rural areas, in inner city where there was despondency?
Well, I think California's gotten it right for the most part. We've elected officials who have really delivered for California over the years, and as it's often said, so goes California, so goes the nation.
But not this time.
Yeah, but in issues and in programs, and I think what rural America was really tired of is, quote unquote, that politician, and they've seen that act for years and years and years, and they were tired of it, and they thought President-elect Trump was something different, because they think the standard bearer of a politician is a guy who makes, or a person that makes promises and never delivers on anything.
So let's talk about California. We'll go back, because in California, the Democrats had a pretty good night. Not an A+. There were a lot of congressional seats that Democrats thought they'd pick off. They did not. In the Assembly, they are +3 and at supermajority status. In the Senate, I don't think it was plus anything, and so no supermajority status in the Senate. What do you make of the Democratic success in California?
I think we've always done well in, nurturing our voters throughout the year, not just during an election year, touching voters, having a real good operation from the state party on down to the local county Democratic chapters.
Sure.
And I think that paid off. I think it demonstrated itself. We've been engaged. We just don't get engaged every 4 years.
So where does the legislature, not Steve Bradford, we'll get there in a second, where does the legislature go from here into 2017? You have a supermajority in the Assembly. You have a majority, not super, in the Senate. I've always perceived that Democrats and Republicans have gotten along well in Sacramento. So do you continue to work with your Republican friends? We still have a Democratic governor. Where do you go from here?
I hope so. I mean, I think the greatest joy for me was the fact that I could work with Republicans.
Right.
And we found common ground on a lot of issues. And I hope we continue in that vein. But with some of the stuff that just happened in this past election, I don't know if that's going to be the case, because you had a couple of Republicans who were really good votes with us, and they're gone. So, I mean, at some point... Right.
A lot of the vulnerable Republicans lost because they were
good votes for us.
Right, they were representing swing districts. So let's talk about Steve Bradford, because Steve Bradford is now returning to Sacramento after having served 6 years in the Assembly. I have known you, sir, as to be someone very interested in criminal justice matters, but you're going to the Senate now. It's a smaller body, only 40 members. And so what are your thoughts as you head back? I'm actually so excited for you. I know how much you wanted it, so I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
So what's the plan?
I just want to continue in the same vein we did in the Assembly, same vein we did in the City Council, of changing people's lives, doing legislation that's effective, that whether it's, like you say, criminal justice reform, whether it's some of the environmental stuff. I chair utilities and commerce, some of the renewable energy things that are substantive, because we sell a lot of hope on renewable energy, and the promise is not really there. And I want to have those real conversations with folks on the benefits, but also the shortcomings.
Have you talked with the leader, Kevin DeLeon, about whether you can be on X committee or Y committee? I don't know. Can you be a chairman pretty quickly, given?
I mean, it all depends on what he chooses to do.
Right.
We haven't had that conversation, but
how does it work? Educate us. How does it work?
I mean,
do you give a like, dear Mr. Chairman, here are my top committees?
That they want to know what your interests are for sure. They want to also know what your skill set. I mean, when I came into Assembly, I wanted to be chair of GO because
government organization,
because that had been the tradition out of that region for years because of the card rooms we had, the racetrack.
Yes,
and so it was
you
a
had
natural.
been on the Gardena City
exactly.
Council.
So it was a natural, but John Perez saw something and says, no, here's this guy who had 12 years as a executive with Edison. No, I want to give you utilities. And it was the best move. So I want to be back on utilities.
You do want to do utilities?
I want to do utilities again for sure. I want to be on GO again. Appropriations, I served on appropriations for all 5 years.
Appropriations, the word may not be very hip.
Exactly.
But explain for our viewers why appropriations is the committee.
It's the gatekeeper on the money. I mean, everybody thinks it's budget, but once the money is allocated in the budget, it's the appropriations committee that greenlights the funding of those programs, and anything that costs over $170,000,
right?
You know, the chairman has the power to hold it or move it forward.
What about, is it justice? I'm not sure what the committee's called. Criminal justice, or what would be?
It probably would be more public safety and judiciary.
Public safety, judiciary, and I think that, you know, with Kamala Harris winning, wouldn't the Senate have to approve the nominee for Attorney General?
Without a doubt.
Well, so that's interesting. And so, are you looking at public safety or what, judiciary?
I mean, I don't need to be on those committees to do that legislation. I definitely want to look at some of that legislation, but you know, I know where my interests are and what my strong suits are.
I want to talk more about criminal justice, because there's no doubt in this decade we have gone through a revolution as it relates to criminal justice in California. We have passed AB 109, which realigned lower level offenders from prison to jail. We passed Proposition, what's the number, 47, which reclassified serious offenses to misdemeanors. We just passed 57, tremendous controversy, allowing for more parole. Where do we go from here? I mean, a lot of, the pendulum sure is swinging towards the progressive on criminal justice.
And it should, because we incarcerate more people than any other nation in the world, in the United States, and California is not, probably leading the nation as incarcerated people. But we realize that hasn't worked.
Right.
And we have to look at.
Were you surprised that Prop 57 passed? Pretty helpful, healthy margin, but the death penalty repeal failed. Yet it passed in some red states. I think Nebraska passed their death penalty repeal.
I was blown away by that.
What do you make of that?
I thought California was definitely ready to get rid of the death penalty
and approved legal marijuana.
Exactly, by
a very significant margin,
like 58% or something like that.
So what do you make?
I'm still pondering that. I was looking at that yesterday and was kind of like blown away that we missed the mark right there to really send a strong signal that the death penalty hasn't worked. I mean, it's not a deterrent to crime as everybody believes or says it is. It's not. No one's thinking about, I'm going to get the death penalty if I go in here and commit this crime and kill somebody.
Okay, his name is Steve Bradford. He is a senator-elect in the California state government. He will be assuming office soon. My name is Brad Pomerance, coming to you from Long Beach. It's Charter Local Edition.